The 3 psychological needs most important for optimum employee satisfaction is autonomy, belongingness, and food. I wonder what I'm going to have for lunch today. No, wait. Competence. I'm gonna go on TikTok for 5 minutes and then it's back to work.
2 hours later.
Productivity is tough. Some of my friends and family often comment and ask me how I happen to juggle 2 jobs and manage a YouTube channel at the same time. And the truth is that I struggle a lot. Productivity and procrastination go hand in hand like bread and butter for me. So in today's video, I want to share with you 8 practices that really help me to be more productive, even when I don't want to be. So tip number 1 is to find your purpose. Now, if you're familiar with any of my videos and you've watched any of my mindset or self-development videos, you'll know that purpose is really important to me, and I believe that it really helps us to really engage in the task or activities that we want to do in our lives. When you're planning to be productive, whether it is to work, to exercise, to engage in a hobby, or any kind of task or activity that requires effort, I feel like it's really important for you to really sit down and think about what your purpose is and why it is that you're doing this activity. So some of the questions that I tend to ask myself when I'm about to engage in a task or an activity are, why am I doing this and what do I get out of it? So really getting into my motivations and the reasons behind my choices, really looking at the rewards that you get out of doing this task or activity, which ideally should be more about how you feel and the internal rewards that you get, like a feeling of satisfaction or accomplishment, rather than trying to get materialistic rewards such as money or luxury items. The next question that I tend to ask myself is this task aligning with my values? So is this action or task aligning with the life that you are choosing to live and the kind of work that you really want to engage in? And finally, will this help my future self? So are the actions that you're doing benefiting a future you? The second tip that I have is to break your larger tasks into smaller tasks and then write it down. And when I say break it down, I mean really break it down. For example, in my role at work, I am responsible for writing a lot of reports and having to engage with clients and do a lot of stakeholder management. So the tasks that I tend to set for myself are really simple and easy for me to do, such as respond to my manager's email about the project budget, or draft out an email to send out to the clients, or start structuring section 3 of the onboarding report. So really simple and really small achievable goals. So the smaller your tasks are, the easier it is for you to be able to accomplish them. And the more you're able to accomplish the different tasks for yourself, the more likely you are to feel productive and want to keep that momentum going. So writing down your tasks at the start of the day is something that I find personally really helpful because it helps me to sort of focus my attentions as to what I really need to do for the day. Usually, as soon as I sit down for work, I'll write down 3 to 5 small key tasks that I need to do for the day. I also make sure to take into account any meetings or seminars or any other kind of work events that I may need to attend, whether face-to-face or virtually. And for some people, breaking down the amount of time that you spend on a task really helps. Personally, for me, I tend to find that I like to leave it a little bit unstructured because for some tasks, I'll find that it takes me longer to complete it and vice versa as well. So personally, for me, it helps to kind of leave it a little bit unstructured. So I have a little bit more flexibility when I'm engaging in a task, and I can really assess at the time whether a certain task requires more effort and more time versus another task. So customize and pick and choose what works best for you. So the third tip that I have is to keep accountable. Now, when I was doing my master's degree, one of the things that we had to do was we had to do 1,000 hours of work placement as part of our degree. And when we actually did our placements, we had to keep a logbook, a very detailed logbook of the dates that we did our placement, our timing, the number of hours that we spent on each day, but also what task did we do for each day. And with that 1,000 hours of work placement that I had to do, I really got into the habit of logging every single work activity that I was doing. And I found that was really helpful for not only structuring my day, but also keeping me accountable And it really also helps me to kind of assess whether I'm spending too much time on a task and whether my efforts could be better spent elsewhere. So at work, and I feel like this is going to give a little bit of insight into how pedantic I am, I have this massive Google Sheet that has the date, the times that I come in from work to the times that I actually finish working. I have the number of hours that I work for that day, and I also have the tasks and activities that I do for the day. So what I tend to do as soon as I get to work is I usually sit down, make myself a cup of tea, write down the 3 to 5 key tasks that I want to complete in that day, and I'll usually write it in future tense. And as I complete each task, I'll change it to past tense. And I find that being able to sort of keep myself accountable, to sort of look at what I had set out to do at the start of the day and then review as I go through the day whether or not I'm able to accomplish this task, it really helps me to assess how I'm going on a project or an assignment that I need to do. And it really helps me to kind of keep focused and constantly reevaluate how I'm doing with my work and whether or not I'm being really productive with what I need to do. And another thing that also helps me as well is that I find that if the key tasks that I need to do are being sort of thrown to the side because there are additional tasks that are being thrown to me by my manager or by people asking me for my help, it also helps me to sort of reassess whether I need to say no more or if I need to speak up and let my manager know if my workload is a little bit too high. So in that sense, it sort of keeps me accountable not only for how productive I'm being, but also whether or not my workload is manageable as well. But if you find that you go really easy on yourself and you find that it helps for you to sort of have somebody else to keep you accountable, get an accountability partner or an accountability group. At the place where I work, we tend to produce a lot of reports and resources and journal articles. And what tends to help us as a group or as a company is on Fridays we have these shut up and write sessions, which usually go from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And so how it sort of works is we all sit together in a group or even virtually on Teams, and we'll check in at the start of an hour, and for 5 to 10 minutes we'll collectively ask the group, okay, what are you planning to work on for the next 25 to 50 minutes? So we'll all speak up and let the group know what we're planning to work on. We'll then go away for 25 to 50 minutes and work on that, and then at the next start of the hour or half an hour, we'll then talk about how we did for that past time period. And the great thing about this is that it's really supportive. The environment that you tend to put is very gentle, and the people that we do these sessions with are usually very positive, and they're also really understanding, and they also understand that sometimes, especially when you're working from home, distractions will happen, and it also keeps you a little bit accountable to be like, okay, why did I get distracted? Was I going on TikTok? Was I watching the news? Was I distracted by press conferences? And it sort of helps you to reevaluate what it is that is distracting you in your day, and it keeps you a little bit accountable because you are reporting to your friends and your colleagues at work. So if it's possible for you to create an accountability group and sort of check in on each other, but do it in a way that's really respectful and really understanding of the situation that you're in, and sort of use that to help you stay on track with what it is that you need to do. So tip number 4 is to tweak your environment. Now, your environment is very conducive to your productivity. Everything from what you are sitting on to what you can smell and see and what you can hear. Now in Perth, we're very blessed that we are now able to go and work in an office. But the problem that I often face is that I work in an open plan space, which often leaves me feeling very overly stimulated because everything around me, from people's conversations to people walking around me to people shutting doors, really sets me off, and not like in an angry way, but I just get really jumpy. So what usually helps me is that I sometimes put in headphones and put in some ambient or white noise to kind of block out the sounds around me. If you're working from home, which sometimes I do, it helps for me to sit in a really quiet room. And if people around me are watching TV, I then plug in headphones to block out the noise. And if you find yourself not as productive as you used to be, it might also help that you actually change the room that you are actually working in to sort of see how that environment or the new environment is working out for you. So tip number 5 is to Pomodoro it. Now, I have the attention span of a goldfish, and even then I think I'm giving myself too much credit. So with the invention of TikTok and Instagram Reels, we're so attuned to consumer consuming content in under a minute that we may fail to keep our attention on a task for a very long time. So what I've been doing lately that has been really working for me is to do the Pomodoro technique. And the Pomodoro technique is where you're working on a task for 25 minutes and then you take a break for 5 minutes and then you go back to the task for 25 minutes and then you take a break for 5 minutes and it goes on and on. So I typically will do 4 Pomodoro sessions, which amounts to about 2 hours before I take a longer break of about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the time of the day. I've actually been doing this technique when I'm working from home to a particular video, which is about 2 hours long. If you haven't checked out any of the work or study with me type videos, personally for me, I find them really therapeutic to listen to, but also really motivating as well. There is a particular video that I will link down below that I listen to that really helps me. And this video is really great because it has no music, but it does have a space heater in the background that acts as sort of white noise. And it's mostly just this girl who's just working and she's just typing out emails, and it's very pleasant, and she has a really calming voice as well, which I find really useful for me to listen to because it sort of calms me down and keeps me from being stressed, which is nice. So I quite enjoy watching those type of videos. And if that work with me type video appeals to you and you think that's something that I should do, maybe comment down below and let me know if that interests you at all. But yeah, so I would recommend doing 4 Pomodoro sessions at a time, which amounts to about 2 hours, and then take a break for 15 to 30 minutes and then go back to it. Tip number 6 is to structure your day in a way that best suits you. Now, this tip may be more relevant to people working from home or those who have flexible working practices. Personally, for me, I tend to work really best in the mornings, the late evenings, and then really late at night. So the way that I tend to structure my day when I'm working from home is that I'll do about 3 hours in the morning, so around 10 a.m. to about 1 p.m. I'll then usually take a lunch break and then usually call my family around this time. And then I'll usually go for a walk if I'm able to fit it in. And then sometime around like about 4 to 7 p.m. I'll then start working again, usually once I've passed through that lunch coma stage. And then I'll usually work sometime around 9 p.m. to about 12 a.m., which I know sounds really crazy, but my best thinking time happens to be at night. So the way that I tend to structure my day is in the morning, I'll do sort of my menial, more administrative tasks that don't require much thought. And then in the evenings and in the nighttime, especially in the nighttime, is when I'll leave like my really cognitive heavy thinking task, because that's the time that works best for me to be able to think. And this is going to look really different for everybody. Some people, like the friends that I have that are more morning people, tend to structure their days really differently from mine. So I have a friend who starts working at 8 a.m. No, if you try and schedule a meeting with me before 10 a.m., I will be there physically, but mentally, I'm out. Tomorrow, when you happen to work, pay attention to when you're most productive and when your best thinking times actually are. And then if you're able to, and if you have flexible working practices, break up your day to best suit your best working times. So tip number 7 is to bargain with yourself. So sometimes, it doesn't happen very often, I really don't feel like working. And this really depends on my mental health state at the time and the kind of support that I have around me. And at the end of the day, we are going through a pandemic, so I feel like your productivity and your mental health is going to ebb and flow, and it's really going to depend on how you're doing with work and what kind of support you have around you at the time. So usually when this happens, I'll tend to bargain with myself and tell myself, just spend 20 minutes on a task. And sometimes when I actually get started, I actually find that it's not as laborious or as cognitive heavy as I initially thought it was. So sometimes I'll actually work longer than the 20 minutes I had initially set out. But if at the end of that 20 minutes you find that you want to stop that task, at least you spend 20 minutes on it. Small wins are still wins, my friends. But if you really can't bring yourself to do it, maybe go back to tip number 1 and really dig deep into your purpose and why it is that you're doing this task or this activity. And maybe see if you can speak to your manager or your team or your colleagues and see if you can craft this task or this activity to be more aligned to what you want to be doing. And lastly, my final tip is to be kind to yourself. I think that during this time, with the rise of expecting us to sort of adjust to the new norm, there is an expectation that we should be more productive because we've had more time to acclimatize ourselves to the current situation. But the truth is, and I'm going to insert a quote that I really liked, because I feel like it sort of encompasses the situation that people are facing right now. And this sort of mentality where we should just be able to adjust to the new norm is really damaging, because I feel like it creates this environment of toxic productivity and positivity, as it sort of dismisses the individual issues that people face of having to be working from home where you have competing roles and priorities, or in situations where you happen to live with family members or with housemates who have different working schedules from you and you have to compromise your working space and your work pace as well. But also some people don't have the efficient or competent working conditions that they would if they were working in an office. But also, at the end of the day, we're still in a pandemic, and that's not something that should be dismissed. And while it's important to put yourself in a positive mindset to get yourself to work, it is just as important to be kind to yourself and take it one step at a time and remind yourself that you are doing the best that you can. If you enjoyed my video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content on sustainable and mindful living. Comment down below and let me know if you happen to do any of these productivity habits, what productivity habits work best for you, but also interestingly, what do you do to procrastinate when you really don't want to be productive? Thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!